Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we are diving headfirst into an ancient true crime mystery hidden right inside a story you probably thought you already knew inside and out. The famous biblical account of Joseph in Pharaoh's dungeon. A lot of us know the broad strokes of Genesis, right? But today, we're going to look a whole lot closer. We are peeling back the layers of history, linguistics, and ancient Egyptian culture to uncover a high-stakes thriller. We're talking royal food tasters, psychological dream analysis, and a literal ticking clock counting down to a very deadly birthday party.
Okay, let's plunge right into the crime scene. Genesis chapter 40 opens with the two absolute most powerful food gatekeepers in all of Egypt being thrown into prison for some completely unspecified offense. Now remember, in the ancient Near East, the king's food and drink were heavily guarded. Ancient rabbinic traditions actually suggest that a fly was found in the king's cup and a pebble in his baked goods. Whatever the exact trigger was, this heavily hints at a foiled assassination plot. Pharaoh is absolutely furious, and until he can sort out exactly who is the traitor and who is simply negligent, he tosses both prime suspects right into the dungeon, the exact same dungeon where Joseph happens to be confined.
Looking at this comparison, it's pretty clear that both of these men had incredibly intimate access to Pharaoh's food and drink. They are the prime suspects, and they are anxiously awaiting judgment. The chief cupbearer, you see, wasn't just some waiter. He was a highly trusted advisor. He was the guy who literally tasted the king's wine to make absolutely sure it wasn't poisoned. On the flip side, we have the chief baker. This guy is the master of the royal ovens, personally responsible for dozens of varieties of pastries and breads destined for the royal table. One of them is a traitor, or at best, fatally incompetent. But the question is, which one?
Well, to solve this mystery, we really have to understand how ancient Egyptians viewed the subconscious mind. The Egyptian word for dream is rsw.t, which actually comes from a root word meaning to be watchful or awake. You see, ancient Egyptians didn't think of dreams as just internal psychology or random firing neurons like we do today. No, they saw them as vital, external omens. A dream was a very real message sent from the gods or the dead or even demons, and it required a charismatic sage, a professional interpreter, to decode its symbolic riddles. Keeping this cultural lens in mind is absolutely crucial for understanding what goes down next in the dungeon.
So, overwhelmed by the sheer anxiety of their impending doom, these two officials experience what we would probably call professional dreams. You know, when you're super stressed out at work and you go to sleep and literally dream about doing your job? Yeah, that is exactly what happens here. Confined in their dark cells, sweating out a potential death sentence, both the cupbearer and the baker dream vividly about their daily tasks, and they do it on the exact same night.
Now check out the cupbearer's dream. What's really fascinating here is how he actively participates in every single stage of the winemaking process. He sees a vine with 3 branches, and in this rapid, almost miraculous succession, it buds, it blossoms, and it ripens right into grapes. But pay attention to his actions. He doesn't just passively serve the wine, he actively picks the grapes, he manually presses the juice right into Pharaoh's cup, and he places it securely into the king's hand.
Joseph listens to this dream and immediately sees something profound. He uses this highly active, transparent behavior in the dream as real psychological evidence that the cupbearer is innocent of the poisoning plot. Think about it. In his subconscious, the cupbearer is essentially acting as his own ultimate supervisor. He's taking absolute, unshakable responsibility for the purity of the king's drink, overseeing the whole thing from the branch to the royal cup. There is nothing hidden here at all. The guy's conscience is completely clear.
But now, contrast that with the baker's dream. Encouraged by Joseph's positive reaction to his cellmate, the baker speaks up and shares his vision. He dreams he's balancing 3 baskets of white bread, called horli, on his head, totally filled with all sorts of baked goods for Pharaoh. But instead of actively serving the king, he is entirely passive. Predatory birds swoop down and just start eating the food right out of that top basket on his head, and he does absolutely nothing to stop them.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how insanely complex ancient Egyptian baking actually was. I mean, look at this relief from an Old Kingdom tomb. Real Egyptian baking involved sifting, kneading, shaping, and baking in these heated clay molds over roaring open fires. It was an incredibly physical, labor-intensive, active profession. Yet, in his own dream, the baker's total lack of involvement in his craft is highly suspicious. He isn't baking. He's just a passive transport mechanism.
So Joseph realizes the baker's subconscious is totally calling him out.
It reveals a massive abdication of duty. The guy merely transports the food completely out of his own line of sight, balancing it on his head, and utterly fails to protect it. This points directly to his guilt, or at the very least, a fatal negligence in his sworn duty to protect the king's food from tampering. Because if birds can get to it that easily in his dream, an assassin could have easily gotten to it in waking life.
Placing their actions side by side like this makes the evidence clear as day. Through the fascinating lens of these dreams, Joseph actually solves the true crime puzzle. One man actively embraces his duty and ensures the total purity of his product, while the other literally lets his responsibility get eaten away by scavengers.
And here's where it gets really dark. Joseph now knows the baker's fate for sure. Those birds in the baker's dream, they aren't just a nuisance stealing a quick snack. In the ancient Near Eastern world, becoming bird food was considered a severe, horrifying curse. It was a terrifying omen that signified a violent death where the body would be left unburied, just ravaged by scavengers. It is a gruesome, unmistakable symbol of absolute ruin. Which brings us to a literally terrifying linguistic twist in the Hebrew text. Joseph delivers his interpretations using this masterful double-meaning idiom, nasa et rosh, which translates to lift up the head. Now, in ancient court language, this phrase could mean to take a census or to pardon and restore someone to honor, or it could mean, quite literally, to lift a person's head right off their shoulders. And Joseph uses this exact same phrase to deliver the final verdicts to both men. First, he speaks to the cupbearer. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your office. Now, for the cupbearer, lifting the head reflects that positive, real-world custom of an ancient king, taking a kneeling petitioner under the chin, lifting their head up, and officially pardoning them. It's a beautiful promise of complete restoration. But notice the chilling addition of just one little phrase when he turns to the baker. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from off you and hang you on a tree. Joseph uses the exact same idiom, likely lulling the baker into a brief, false sense of security before slamming down the phrase me alekha, meaning from off you. It's a brilliant, if utterly horrifying piece of prophetic wordplay that reveals the gruesome execution to come. Let's look at the timeline here, because it builds some incredible suspense. Those 3 branches and 3 baskets in the dreams, they symbolized a precise 3-day countdown. Day 1, the dreams happen and are interpreted by Joseph. Day 2 is just this agonizing wait in the dark. And Day 3 is the culmination, a highly significant date on the Egyptian calendar that forces Pharaoh's hand to finally make his judgment. That 3rd day just so happens to be Pharaoh's birthday. But in ancient Egypt, this festival, known as Chet Ha en Swa, wasn't just a fun party with cake and presents. It was a massive, highly strategic display of absolute royal power. Historical records actually show that royal birthdays were the specific days when kings granted widespread public pardons and amnesties, but they also carried out high-profile executions just to show off their might. It was the ultimate day of judgment. So the birthday feast kicks off and the narrative clock strikes 0. Just as Joseph predicted, the judgments are handed down exactly according to the clues that were hidden within those professional dreams. The cupbearer's head is lifted in honor, and he once again presses the cup safely into Pharaoh's hand. Meanwhile, the baker's head is lifted in execution. He is hanged, and those terrifying birds of prey fulfill their dark symbolic role right out of his nightmare.
Ultimately, what should we take away from all this? Well, this explainer shows us how Joseph operates on a totally different level than anyone else in Egypt. When confronted with these dreams, his first instinct isn't to pull out some magical Egyptian textbook. Instead, he says, "Do not interpretations belong to God?" Joseph acts as a true charismatic sage. He relies on divine wisdom to uncover deep psychological truths and linguistic puns, totally outshining the traditional Egyptian magicians and solving this royal true crime mystery.
And because Joseph successfully decoded these dreams, 2 years later, that restored cupbearer would finally remember him, bringing him before Pharaoh to literally save Egypt from famine. I'll leave you with this provocative thought. How absolutely incredible is it that a secular birthday calendar, deeply hidden Hebrew wordplay, and the raw human anxiety of 2 palace workers all converged in a dark dungeon to completely alter the course of biblical history? It really makes you reconsider all the complex, amazing historical layers hidden inside texts we thought we already knew so well.